The time is now 1:46, and I hereby call the November 15th meeting of the Area Plan Commission to order. Before we begin, I got a few announcements. This meeting is being held in person on the fourth floor of the council chambers of the County City Building, and also virtually via Zoom. Video and phone teleconferencing links and phone information are posted on our website at sjcindiana.com. Due to issues with usage of video by persons viewing meetings, the county has determined it is appropriate to require during virtual and partially virtual meetings that members of the public viewing meetings keep their microphones and cameras turned off. The host of the meeting will turn the members of the public microphones and cameras off. During portions of the meetings where public participation is permitted, the participating member of the public will have their microphones and camera, if any, turned on. If a member wishes to participate in this portion of the meeting, they should indicate this by using the raise hand function in Zoom and/or by messaging the host in the chat function. When on phone, please use *9 to use the raise hand feature to be called on, and you can also use *6 to unmute. To use the raise hand feature in Zoom video, please click the controls on the bottom of your screen. If you have two computer video windows open and a phone line active, with the video window open at the same time, you'll create an echo effect, making hearing you impossible. Please choose one option. Regarding public comment, I will first ask for any public comment for those sitting in the chambers, then the auxiliary seating of the building. Once those in person have provided their comment, those calling in the meeting remotely will be given the opportunity to provide public comment. Sign-in sheets for public comment have been removed to prevent everyone from touching the same pen. For this reason, please clearly state your name and address. Please do not be surprised if you are asked to spell your name for the record. Your speaking time will not start until this is done. With that, may we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Devon,
Present?
Mr. Hawley,
Present.
Mr. Moffett, Dr. Thacker,
Present.
Ms. McCombs, Mr. McNamara,
Late.
Mr. England, Ms. Gendron.
Here.
Thank you, Shelley. We are a 9-member commission. Currently, we have 5 members present in person and 0 members attending virtually today. If any petitioner would prefer to have their petition heard with more members present, they may ask staff to have their item tabled to a future meeting when more members might be present. Just to make announcements, items 3 and 4 on our agenda, before the meeting, the petitioner had requested that their items be tabled to prevent any confusion between the overlay districts for items 1 and 2 and any rezoning, so they don't confuse the two. So those items 3 and 4 are being tabled till most likely next month's meeting. For those that, if you did not hear that beforehand. So with that, can we have the rezonings for petition number 1, please? I guess it's not a rezoning, it's a,
Rezoning number 1, a proposed ordinance, number 1, amending Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of St. Joseph County Code to add a zoning overlay district applicable to the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area within unincorporated St. Joe County and amending Section 154.025, Sub B, to add Indiana Enterprise IEC Overlay District as an established overlay district. And number 2, amending the official zone map of St. Joe County to apply the new Indiana Enterprise Center IEC Overlay District to an area generally known as the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area. Application number 2988-22.
We'll get started here, Steve. Shelley, would you be able to please click on.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. All right. So Abby Wiles, Area Plan Commission Director. We have Steve Sizemore here with Kendig-Keist Collaborative. I will give a brief update, or not update, but an overview of how we came to bring Kendig-Keist on board with us for the project, and then Steve will walk through all of the standards. If you recall, back in August, we gave what I called, or joked was a teaser on the design standards, and now we're bringing them forward for you for recommendation. So in regards to the Indiana Enterprise Center, as the rezonings were coming forward, there was ultimately a resolution that was passed by the town of New Carlisle, Olive Township, the County Redevelopment Commission, and the County Board of Commissioners. And it was an agreement of sorts that all parties, with a number of commitments that all parties agreed to, defining the core development area geographic boundaries, that the town would work on their comprehensive plan. One of those commitments was design guidelines and standards for the IEC overlay area. The Redevelopment Commission staff, well, Bill Shalio, Economic Development Director, has worked with Sean Klein and I on how we put these standards into the zoning ordinance. Ultimately, we solicited 3 estimates from companies that we thought would be a good fit to help us with the project, and we ultimately selected Kendig-Keist Collaborative. Their contract was approved through the Redevelopment Commission. They came on, or under contract with us in May of this year to help translate a lot of the visionary documents that were part of the IEC master plan into an IEC overlay that is the teeth to enforce the vision of the plan. We assembled a small working group. This included representatives from a representative from Area Plan, Jim, who's not with us today, but he is appointed from the town council. Marcy Kaufman from the town council, Will Miller, the Olive Township trustee, Carl Baxmeyer, who at the time was on the redevelopment commission but is now county commissioner, the councilman for that district, and we assembled a small working group to help provide feedback to the staff and the consultant throughout the process. That was earlier in the spring. We've done a series of working group meetings via Zoom with Kendig-Keist and staff working through various aspects of the overlay. Now we are presenting it to you for a recommendation. It goes forward tonight. It would go to the county council committee that has been moved up a week from next Tuesday to tonight. So if you have any questions about the process and how we got here, I'll turn it over to Steve Sizemore with Kendig-Keist, and he'll walk through the standards and how it differs from our industrial district.
Thank you, Abby. It is good to be in South Bend, my first time here, and hopefully I can beat the snow on my way south, but I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. I've had a great time working with staff and the work group over the last 6 months or so, and it's been an iterative process, a good process in terms of really getting it down to the essence that we are presenting today. And I'm going to try to see if this works. I don't think this does. No, it does. So the next few minutes, I'm going to give you an overview of the standards and basically the composition of the overlay as you have before you. And then we can, got it?
There we go.
Is it working?
Yep.
Okay, good. So the intent of the overlay is basically to fulfill and implement the work that's been done to now, including the design guidelines and the standards, and basically standardizing everything, and also implement all the elements that were part by resolution. So we have been looking at emerging practices. This district is quite unique in the sense that it's a semi-rural area. Most industrial parks are adjacent to a city or in a more urbanized area. This one is a little bit different than others in that sense, and so gave us an opportunity to explore different best practices in a way, balancing between an industrial focus and conservation good design. So balancing with high-quality aesthetics as well as performance. So we also included lots of elements related to sustainability, as you will find, integrated throughout, as well as a menu of incentives for the applicants to use in the district. So the actual overlay is established, will be established by the APC or the county commissioners. And it will overlay all other zoning districts with the exception of the agricultural district. And then so the uses and the standards that are in the overlay will supersede those. And in the act that there is potential conflict between the more stringent standard will prevail. So, and then if there is an existing use, existing property in the district, the overlay will not kick in until they expand the structure or the impervious pavement by more than 25%. So we've taken an approach to drafting this, and one way to make it, to simplify things, to make it easier to use. So one of the ways we did it was looking at the use table and defining all the specific permissions by the use. So instead of a list, basically organizing in a way that we use what we call use categories. So bunching similar uses together where you have a category and then you have the specific uses listed next to it as well as their permissions. And then we also have a list of specific prohibited uses. These actually reflect the uses that were part of the resolutions. And so, but also something that's new to the county is a mechanism to determine if there is a proposal of a use that is not listed, a way that you can actually, a set of criteria that you can determine if it's functionally similar, and so allow for a determination by the zoning administrator to do that, or the director. And it's based off objective criteria. There's also a set of performance standards, many of which we've carried over from the existing, from the county's ordinance, but also some other new ones, such as the vibration standards table. And then we've added some other standards here related to, and I'll mention those here in a moment. The conditional uses and the special uses have specific standards that they have to meet, criteria for those, in addition to the ones that are already outlined in the code, in the county code. And then there are standards for accessory and temporary uses. So the uses are categorized by permitted by right, conditional use, and those that are special use. Mentioned the prohibitions by resolution. And then basically these are uses producing nuisances and external impacts. So think of slaughterhouses, mining, anything that would create that externality. For the unlisted and similar uses, there's criteria built in for flexibility and for decision. The administrator, or the director, I guess, would be, has the discrepancy. So, but if it's not authorized, then it's prohibited. Mentioned the use table, where we categorize similar uses, as a use category, but also the use, the specific uses to the side of that, and then the actual use standards that it would be referenced by its permission. And the use categories are organized by agricultural uses, commercial, civic, and institutional uses, industrial uses, and accessory and temporary uses. I mentioned the performance standards, so all uses have to meet these. You have the noise, and we refer to the existing standards for noise. Vibration is new. The air quality we refer to, basically air quality and toxic substances, we refer to state and federal regulations. The exceptions of this, it does provide for noise exceptions between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. related to the permitted uses. And then we have we have methodology for measuring these standards within the overlay. In terms of the dimensional standards, the lot, how buildings sit upon the lots, we carried over the recommendations from the guidelines for this, working together with the work group and staff to kind of see what actually works for the district. So those are outlined in the table. Here, we also require 20% open space and recommending a 75% maximum lot coverage. And within that open space, we have standards related to what is permissible within the open space, what type of uses, what qualifies as open space, what doesn't qualify. In terms of the building setbacks, we wanted to make sure that you still kept the rural element, but also in a way that protects the overall character. And so we're going with, recommending a 50-foot setback. And then one of the key parts of that is to setting a parking setback requirement. So basically, there's a buffer between the street and the parking, and then limiting the amount of parking. I'll talk about that in a moment, but really limiting the amount of parking between the street and the building, so it's not a big parking lot. When you roll down the road, that's all you see. So we'll talk about that here in a second. There's also permissions for the height staying at 60 feet, but for every foot above 60, there has to be an extra 2 feet of side, rear, and rear setback. And that's up to 90 feet. Mentioned the parking location. What we want to do is make sure it's limiting the amount in the front and locating it to the side. And there are standards related to any redevelopment, how that occurs, what the process for that. We're carrying over the industrial requirement in terms of the minimum parking, one per 1,500 square feet. And other uses will be reflecting, I said carried over, actually, this is a new one, and we're referring to section 154-420 for the remaining uses. With the parking design, the parking lot design, instead of having it just one contiguous pavement, breaking it up, the idea is to break it up into modules, into little sections, so you would have 10 parking spots, and then you would have landscape islands and such, and pedestrian facilities throughout the parking facilities. This way it breaks it up, provides a little bit, a break in terms of pavement, as well as opportunity for integrating open space and landscaping in the process. And we have provisions for snow storage as well. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is obviously not in the industrial district, but I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of making sure the parking is limited in the front. You can see the setback here and pathways integrated in with point number C. And then the landscape and parking areas defined by stalls. So you have trees, and you can integrate stormwater facilities in these spaces. So building in the flexibility to meet various objectives of the overlay. The building design standards is a feature of this too, in terms of trying to meet a high quality aesthetic. And so we've broken this up into 3 scales of buildings. So you have the small, which are going to be those that are 50,000 square feet and under, and between 50 and 200,000 square feet would be the medium size, and anything over 200,000 would be the large. And we had back and forth discussions with the work group in terms of what met where that threshold was, and this is the sweet spot that we landed at. The idea is to identify different treatment for those buildings so you can break up the mass of the larger buildings. So you're not just a large standalone industrial warehouse or building, that you break the facades up into 50-foot increments to where you do different treatments to kind of humanize that space related to the public realm. And I'll kind of show you here what I mean. On the small buildings, so think of, I don't know if this has a pointer. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So think of, on smaller buildings, you want to have horizontal projections. So being a canopy or something like that, that breaks up the vertical as well as the horizontal component. Putting dormers with ridge lines, breaking up into parts, the buildings into 3 parts. So you have a bottom part, a middle part, and a top part of the horizontal element, providing for parapet walls or towers. So any of these would be part of breaking up that space. So every 50 feet include one of these elements. On the medium-sized buildings, between 50 and 200, we carry over the same requirements, but also looking at ways to do like ground-level arcades. So if you see the image in the bottom left, having sort of an arcade or a canopy or potential for a balcony over top. Doesn't mean every building has to have a balcony, but it's just a form to break that up. And then other features to reduce, basically the idea is to reduce the mass. These aren't law, these are just basically standards that help provide a way to design the facade every 50 feet. And in anything over 200,000, focusing on defining the entrance as well as any vertical element like towers and such to sort of provide some visual element to it. Mentioned the articulation, ensuring that there are windows or doors every 50 feet, as well as I mentioned the horizontal elevation, and then treating the roof, breaking the roof up in a way that there's articulation along that span of space. We also outline the different materials, building materials, looking between brick, steel, and brick, stone, and metal as the preferred building materials, but within that, different ways of treating those materials. Focusing in on the primary entrances, using treatments such as canopies, awnings, arcades, et cetera. And then identifying fencing, the way that fencing relates to the property. So ensuring that it's done in a way we recommend, I think it's black vinyl or black PVC. It's railless, but the idea is that the fencing should just blend in with the landscaping. 8-foot minimum height, or maximum height. The landscaping is something we work closely with not just staff, but also some experts in the community in terms of trying to figure out a way to integrate best practices in this, and specifically the use of native plants, native planting. So we have a requirement for at least 50% native, or plants, native, not only native, but native cultivars as well. With the idea being conservation of the existing landscape as the preferred method for landscape treatment. This would be included as part of the landscape plan. We also have provisions for screening of mechanical equipment, so that would be either screening for the rooftop mechanical or wall-mounted or ground-mounted. So it could be through landscaping or fencing, but every piece of equipment would need to be screened. We have signage and wayfinding standards. We reference the existing standards, but with the existing of lighting on the signage, as well as on sign types like a monument sign, ensuring that there's landscaping at the base of it. As well as permitting for a master sign program, this being part of an organized district. The idea of it having a master sign program would be recommended, and that way we would create a consistent character throughout the district, as well as wayfinding on-site or throughout the district. So there are standards in this that guide that process. And I mentioned the sustainability element. And the sustainability incentives function in a couple ways here. First, there are required elements, basic required elements, and these are mostly related to, these would be required for all applicants in the IEC. And then every applicant would have to meet at least 3 points in the menu. And the menu is broken up into a variety of options, different categories. So there's an alternative energy and energy conservation category. So incentives listed under that. There are opportunities to gain points if the building is going for LEED certification. There are transportation incentives and water conservation. So the more points you get, the more benefits you get. And so there's a menu of incentives related to height, and I want to, so basically height, parking, signage, and for landscaping. So to make sure, so the more points you accrue in that, you can get a reduction, say, for example, in your parking requirements or your signage requirements, if you include 4, 5, 6 points. So there is a menu of options related to those points. And so, and I can get to that real quick here. The idea being that if they get, for example, 10 points or more, they would get all those incentives. If they get 7 to 9, they would get 3 of them, et cetera. So the more points you get, the more access to the incentives you get, and with the requirement of meeting at least 3 of these. So this was our way to provide some flexibility to really create a new form of industrial district here, and attract the type of uses that are intended as part of the vision for this being, advanced manufacturing, as well as, more intended uses for that as outlined in the vision of the plan. So we can go into specifics of the standards now. I just wanted to give you an overview of what's in the proposal before you.
Thank you, Steve. Anything else, or should we open up?
No, just if you have any questions about the specific standards, Steve and staff are happy to answer, but we will take public comment on this because it's a text amendment and it's also a rezoning to, well, not rezoning, but it's like a rezoning in that we are applying the IEC overlay to the core development area.
Yeah, I'd call it a zoning map change. Technically, it's not a rezoning exactly, but it does qualify as a zoning map change.
Thank you. So we will go ahead and open up to public comment at this time. For anybody here present wishing to speak in favor of this adding of this overlay district, please come forward and state your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, I think it is. Deborah Doral, 21677 Auten Road, South Bend. I want to add my support to this project. I think that it is a significant improvement on how we have been doing development in general for a while. I do have a couple of concerns that I would like to detail out. I have spoken about this already with both Abby and briefly with Bill. I do think that the water management and the water conservation in the IEC area is of primary importance. And so I would like to see some provision for pervious pavement as well as the lack of use of chemicals that would run off into our waterways and that kind of thing. And as an additional sustainable measure, I would like to see that as the landscape plantings are being planted, maintained, and weeded, that again, we do not see pollinator habitat kinds of problems such as insecticides and herbicides being used to primarily just make things pretty. While we are looking at design aspects to break up the mass of this, functionally, these kinds of industrial developments on rural land are massive. And as far as the life that is trying to exist in and around these areas, the pockets that we provide are critical for both seasonal and year-round survival of all of our other life, which by extension creates the quality of life here for the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Anybody else present wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward and state your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Francis. I reside at 54174 Juday Lake Drive, South Bend, Indiana, up in Clay Township. And I don't think I've spoken before this commission before, so I'll just give you a little bit of my background. For 10 years, I was state chair of a large environmental organization for the state of Indiana, and I'm an economist. I have a consultancy on sustainable energy and economic development, and a graduate degree in economics from the University of Notre Dame. So I speak in favor. Originally, just to be in full disclosure, I was against the IEC setup and being done out in farmland. I just want to be clear about that. But now that we're here, I do favor this expanded overlay in place of particularly the very hastily drafted written commitments that were put in place in the original by the council in the original of IEC designation, because it does include most of those and expands it. However, I do have several problems and questions with this that perhaps we can work on. Even if you pass this up, I'd be working with council members to see that perhaps those changes could be made, and perhaps with Abby and Abby Wiles and staff as well, to see if we can get some support for this. One of the problems I see is in terms of what's prohibited, and I think there's a lot of heavy industry that should be included in that, and part of that reason is the heavy industry definition. I've learned to go to definitions. That's where the lawyers go, and it's not adequate to prohibit that. And I think some of you may remember we had a huge controversy about 15 years ago about putting a coal gasification plant right out in that area. And I think that anything to do that is a major generating facility such as coal or should be in the heavy industry prohibited category. It's too polluting for our area. It's probably, I&M, our utility, although has no plans for that. I've been involved in their integrated resource planning on a professional level. It's possible it could be in the future, and this is something for the future that I think we need to be careful about. Also, there are modular nuclear generating facilities that should be prohibited and not allowed, because even though they could fit, the new ones can fit on 80 acres of land, there's nothing in here that would prohibit that. I think they ought to be expressly prohibited. And in fact, I would say, personally, I'd say renewable generating facilities that don't pollute, that don't have water issues, water consumption issues, should be allowed, but any non-renewable should go through the full conditional use process, including natural gas plants, because that is what I&M plans to do, is to develop and build a very large natural gas plant in coming years. Second, on the sustainable, can you give me a time when I'm up, have 1 minute left or something?
Yeah, minute 45, yeah.
What's that?
Minute 40.
Okay. On the, I'm really pleased with the sustainable point system. I have a couple things I'd like to add. I don't think that they change the inherent nature of it. There is a question of where, whether those changes can be made at the council level and whether that would have to come back to the APC, and I am concerned about that. I think it would be really good to get this in place before the end of the year, because you do have a potential customer and transfer of land that this would be good to get in place beforehand. So I don't know where you can go with that procedurally, but I'm talking with my council member and others about how we might deal with that. I would add that there needs to be something on a carbon plan with anybody that comes in, because on the planning level, we are looking at establishing a climate action plan for the county. And I think that would be appropriate to put into the overlay that they do that. I do have problems with the point system, whether they add up, whether they're true incentives, whether they will result in or cost more costly than what they get for that. And I don't know if this can be done. Perhaps lawyers can look at this, but I would suggest that if we want to change the point system, you got to open up the ordinance and change the ordinance as opposed to referring to a document that could be done in a more flexible way. And I don't know if that can be changed at this point, but where you can change the point system, because I know full well, you don't open up stuff the month after you've gone through a whole hearing process, very usually. It's a couple years down the road, and I do think that there need to be some things added to this that I will be submitting to the planning staff and the council staff, and the council as well, because my time is up, and I appreciate your sitting patiently and hearing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else present wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. This is for anybody present wishing to speak in favor. Seeing no one else, is there anybody online wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, is there anybody present wishing to speak against this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Bob Humbarger. I live at 29987 Herd Road, Niles Township. And also, our farm is on the west side of, includes property on the west side of Snowberry, a quarter mile south and east of the IEC. So I'm in the neighborhood. The question, and difficult for me to decide whether I'm in favor or opposed to this overlay, because I heartily recommend the APC for trying to improve the brief language that was hastily added in the 2021 rezoning of the IEC, and that was added just to get it passed, I believe. And that language added to the rezoning was good, but certainly inadequate. This overlay effort is certainly appreciated by all of us who live in the area. However, the area plan is supposed to be a forward-looking branch of the government, and the language in the overlay seems very weak in requirements for important global warming mitigation and environmental degradation protection. Let's face it, climate and environment woes are bad and are getting worse faster. Of the 2022 overlay, or of the 202 pages of the overlay, I did not notice much significant language about the carbon sinks. Treatment of stormwater runoff going into the aquifer instead of just language where it's coming out of the aquifer. Words like water conservation, what does that mean? We don't want stormwater runoff going directly into the aquifer. And since there's such a high water table, I think it needs some kind of environmental treatment of that water before it goes into the aquifer, such as wetlands. And I think in the other documents that were delayed, there was actually planned to eliminate areas of wetlands that are in this area. I know many of you have indicated you do want to address climate and environmental woes, but we know that many of our, in our county don't agree. And the recent local election bears that out. And this overlay may need to be weak in certain requirements, and I understand that. And in order to get certain developers and to get the overlay passed, I know you can't have everything. But it's important that you can't have it both ways. you can't placate the reluctant without sacrificing the urgency of putting the creative requirements that future land use protection needs. For this reason, I would think that you'd want to table this proposal and work out some of those carbon sink and land protection details before you present it to the council. And this is not only about the overlay. We're working on the comprehensive plan update, and this coming to this body, and I hope that document is more about the future than this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else present wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none. Anybody online wishing to speak against this petition, please state, use the raise hand feature or the chat feature.
Hello.
Is that Corey?
Hello.
Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name's Nancy Carr, and I live on Early Road in New Carlisle. And just one thing I would like to address right now is the letter that was sent out regarding this meeting you're having today went to my 94-year-old mother-in-law, who actually just passed away this past week. We've not even had her funeral yet. But in that letter, she was told that you, the Area Plan Commission, would not be able to send letters to everybody, and that you asked that she try to inform other people in our community. And I don't know, it seems like when it's time for our tax bills to come out, we all get our tax bills, and it just seems only fair to everybody in this community that they should have received a letter regarding this meeting you're having. And so right now, I would just ask that you would table this until other people in the community can be made aware of it, so that we can have a better understanding of what is going on. And I just, I would appreciate if you could do that.
Abby Wiles, APC Director. We have language that goes in all of our notification letters about that we notice property owners within 660 feet per our bylaws and the statute, but then we have template language in there that states not everybody in the immediate area gets a letter if you're just outside of the notification area, so please feel free to share this information with your friends and neighbors if they're interested. That might be what Nancy's referring to.
Well, actually, no, this letter I live literally next door to my mother-in-law, and I did not get a letter. And I've talked to several in the community that live very close to this whole thing. They did not receive a letter about it. And I just don't know how you could expect a 94-year-old woman to try to inform people. And it really, to be fair to all of us, we have a right to know what's going on.
Thank you. And as Abby stated, yeah, per our bylaws and state statute, we, our local code, we notify everybody within 660 feet. Unfortunately, when you're in the more, larger agricultural area, 660 feet doesn't necessarily get a whole, that far to many neighboring properties, so.
No, it didn't.
And actually, that expanded a couple of years ago. It used to be about half that in the county, and we expanded that to double that, for those of you that don't recall, so.
Well, then if you could at least table so that all of us could start spreading the word out here and maybe be more involved in your next meeting next month would be helpful.
Is there anything else? Otherwise, is there anybody else wishing to speak against this petition? Please use the raise hand feature, state your name and address. Seeing none. At this time, petitioner, is there anything you want to comment, rebut on? Before we,
Steve, do you have anything specifically that you'd like to follow up on based on the comments received?
Just quickly on the carbon sink component, we worked really hard to make sure that with the requirement of the 20%, and that could be a large, these are large parcels, but elements such as how the parking lots are designed, the integration of low-impact practices, low-impact development practices in terms of landscaping, native plants, these type of practices. This is quite forward-thinking in terms of what we're presenting in this, and I would encourage anybody who wants to learn more about these, look at what is integrated here. We think that we've balanced between the intent of the district as well as looking at the sensitive context of this area. And so that's the only thing I would like to add to that, but there are specific practices in here related to stormwater integration in the site and keeping native plants as well as the design of the site sensitive to what's existing. So that's the only thing I would like to add.
And I completely understand what Deborah, Bob, and Steve said, that there are improvements to be made within the overlay, but we really do have to start somewhere. And this is kind of like the starting point of where we're looking to begin with the IUC overlay. It can always be better, but this is above and beyond anything that's our existing industrial standards.
thank you, Abby. With that, do we have any questions by the commission before we have a motion?
There seems to be a lot of question regarding water as it flows, just stormwater, drain water, what have you, and its impact on local agricultural sites. Is that something to be considered in a future iteration of the overlay?
Sorry, Brittany, I was looking for our stormwater management section in here and the exact language.
Okay.
John, I'm looking at you because we have design of stormwater management on site shall be in accordance with drainage board. We do have stormwater quality treatment for runoff to be addressed using appropriate treatment, train approach, bioretention, suitable alternative retention measures, and that on-site landscaping and car park areas and open spaces within lots can be used for detention of stormwater. That's it right now, Brittany. If there's a desire to integrate enhanced standards moving forward, that's something we can look into.
Thank you. I just wanted to
Yeah.
re-ask and reiterate that question because it seemed important to the general public.
And Steve, I don't recall that that's something that we spent a lot of time with the working group on.
The question was, working with the work group on this, they weren't as concerned. They didn't bring up the question or doubts about this. When we presented it, they were supportive of this approach. The feedback in terms of what the work group and others in the community provided us related to the landscape practices, specifically related to the retaining native species. These are key elements in terms of performance. When you can maintain the natural habitat for these types of plants, that can aid in better stormwater treatment as well. And so that was something that received more feedback than other parts. One of the key differences here too is making sure, and I mentioned this earlier, is making sure that the open space, the stormwater there are a couple different sections here. So there's the stormwater management section, but if you go back to the actual open space requirements, there's a stormwater management devices in section, I guess, 321G, that basically outlines the use of including retention and detention ponds or bioretention areas can be treated as open space if the area includes at least access and natural features, vegetative landscaping, other basically water visible circulation devices, and visually attractive low fencing, basically integrating as part of the site design rather than just incidental to the site. So incorporating it as part of it. So that was part of what we looking towards a functional performance element, but as well as an aesthetic component.
Thank you.
Any other questions by the commission? Otherwise, does anybody want to entertain a motion for adding this overlay district?
I move we send it to the county council with a favorable recommendation.
Bob Hawley, I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to send APC 2988-22 to the county council with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We have a reading for petition number 2, please.
A proposed ordinance, number 1, amending Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 152, zoning of the Town of New Carlisle Code to add a zoning overlay district applicable to the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area within the Town of New Carlisle, and amending Section 152.035 Sub B to add Indiana Enterprise Center IEC overlay district as an established overlay district. And number 2, amending the official zone map of the Town of New Carlisle to apply the new Indiana Enterprise Center IEC overlay district to an area generally known as the Indiana Enterprise Center Core Development Area. APC application number 2989-22.
Shelley, I apologize. Could you click back for me to the mapping slide? It should be 2 or 3.
Shoot.
All right, so while Shelley's getting there on the slide, I'll just say that this is an identical set of standards for the Town of New Carlisle's zoning ordinance. A portion of the IEC core development area that is shown in purple on the map is within the town limits. So this is just adopting the same language that we went over into the town's zoning ordinance.
So do we need to have a presentation, or is that? So this is to the town council, not, correct?
Correct.
Yes, this would go to the Town Council of New Carlisle, and if the staff would prefer to officially incorporate their presentation from petition 1 for this one, they would not have to go over it again.
I mean, Steve's here, no, I'm joking. You can have it all over again, but, yeah. The town did hear about this in an executive session earlier today.
If there's nothing else we want to add, I will open it up. So being that this is pretty much identical to petition number 1, going towards the Town Council of New Carlisle, is there anybody else anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, anyone online wishing to speak in favor of this petition, please use the raise hand feature or enter in the chat. Seeing none. Anyone present wishing to speak against this petition, please come forward and state your name and address. And seeing none, anyone online wishing to speak against this petition, please use the raise hand feature or chat feature. Again, seeing none. I will now close this to the public. Is there any last comments or questions by the staff? Otherwise, may we have a motion, please?
We're sending this to the town council
Correct.
of.
Yes, it goes to the New
Town
Carlisle
council.
Town Council.
Okay. I motion that we favorably recommend this to the town council of New Carlisle.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to send APC 2989-22 to the Town Council of New Carlisle with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Items 3 and 4 have been tabled to next month's meeting. We do have a text amendment to motion, to vote on, and listen to. Can we have that reading, please?
To terminate written commitments, oops. Oh, excuse me. Text amendments. A proposed ordinance amending Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code, Section 154.106, Sub B, to allow highway maintenance shops and yards as a permitted special use in the R Single Family District.
Yeah, good evening. This is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. Yeah, so it's pretty self-explanatory. This is a text amendment to add highway garages as a special use in the R Single Family District. This is in recognition that there are areas in the county that may be in need of highway garages, large swaths of land that are zoned R Single Family District, but would be appropriate locations for highway garages. Currently, highway garages are permitted in the I and C district as permitted primary uses and as a special use in the A agricultural district. But areas zoned are single family that would be appropriate for highway garages might not be appropriate for the full array of potential future uses that would come with the rezoning to I, A, or C. And this would still have the safeguard of the special use review process with the Area Board of Zoning Appeals and the County Council to ensure that it is an appropriate location and won't have any adverse impacts on residential development in the area. So happy to answer any questions.
This require a public hearing?
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other questions by commission? Otherwise,
Could you define a little bit, clarify on the maintenance shops? Does this mean that they can store salt? Can they store trees and shrubs and stuff that have, I mean, I go by this place on, I think it's on Cleveland Road, right by the tow road. And the other day, I noticed just a big pile of, looked like they had chopped up a bunch of blacktop, you know, scraped it up and piled it up there. It was pretty ugly.
Yeah, so that would be involved in that definition. So again, the suitability of the site is really going to come down to that specialized determination that the county council is going to make for that specific site. Now, I mean, there's a lot of course, residentially zoned properties where this would not at all be appropriate because of the level of outdoor storage. So that's something that's going to have to be made on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
I will now open this up to the public. Is there anybody present wishing to speak in favor of this text amendment? Please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, is there anyone online wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please use the raise hand feature or in the chat. Do we have that? Seeing none, anybody present wishing to speak against this petition, please state your name and address, or come forward, state your name and address. Didn't see none. Anybody online wishing to speak against this text amendment, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, I will now close this to the public. Any last comments or concerns or questions by the commission? Otherwise, may we have a motion?
Move we approve the text amendment.
Would be sending it with a favorable recommendation.
Where are we sending it?
To the county council.
County Council.
County Council.
Bob Holly, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to send text amendment. I guess we don't have a number, do we? The text amendment to the favorable recommendation to the county council. All those in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Couple items for miscellaneous, not requiring public hearing. Abby?
Yes, we have approval of the Area Plan Commission and Plat Committee calendars for 2023. We were originally doing battle with the city of South Bend as to who got the meeting room the day after Martin Luther King Day in January. They have graciously given us our time back. So Adam and I had back and forth about whether or not we were going to have to move up that meeting. We don't. We'll be at 3:30. So approval of the calendars for Area Plan Commission and Plat Committee for 2023.
I move we approve the Plan Commission meeting schedule for 2023.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the APC meeting schedule for 2023. All those in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I move we approve the Plat Committee 2023 meeting schedule.
Bob Holly, second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the Plat Committee meeting schedule for 2023. All those in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Executive Director's report.
Did not have a written report for you, apologize for that. We are here doing the overlay today. That's been something that we've been working on for the last few months. Also, we are wrapping up our comprehensive plan working groups, and I've had a lot of questions about what's next, and from a few folks in the audience in the chambers here today. We are finishing up the working groups for each of the 8 areas. Once that work is complete, it will all be compiled, reviewed by staff and the consulting team, and then presented to the task force. The task force will be the clearinghouse before any drafts are released, and we'll be doing a series of public meetings in the final phase of the plan in early 2023. So stay tuned for those dates. We're still determining dates and locations, but we will notify you once we have them.
Thank you, Abby. You don't have minutes, correct?
No minutes this month.
Sorry, John.
Okay, done? You're all done?
Motion to adjourn.
I move we approve the minutes.
No minutes.
There aren't any minutes.
Shelley was working
How
hard.
can we approve them if there aren't any? I move we adjourn.
Second.
The motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right.
I just completely forgot about
I just had it.